She thought they were going to settle it when she walked out of the dorm with them. For weeks, Christa had been telling anyone who would listen that Colleen was trying to steal her boyfriend, 17-year-old Daryl Shipp. Colleen's friends said it wasn't true. Staff had heard hints of arguments and threats. Christa liked to lean into a dark image, talking about Satan, rituals, and how dangerous she was. That night, she told 19-year-old Colleen she was tired of the drama, that they should walk, smoke some weed, and finally make peace, away from the Job Corps Center. Colleen went because the tension had become exhausting. Ending it sounded better than waiting for the next confrontation. Once they were deep enough into the trees, there was no more talk about peace. Christa turned on Colleen. Daryl joined in. The first punches knocked Colleen off balance and into the dirt. Leaves and gravel scraped her skin. She tried to get up and was shoved back down, blows raining across her body, while Christa shouted accusations and curses. Slashes opened across Colleen's chest and torso. The attack didn't end quickly. It stretched on for roughly half an hour. All the while, their friend, 18-year-old Shadala Peterson, stayed on the edge of the clearing, watching the tree line and the campus lights while her friends kept Colleen pinned in the dirt. At one point, Colleen's shirt was pulled up. Christa leaned over her and carved a rough pentagram into her chest with the box cutter. It matched the persona she had been building around Job Corps. Devil worship, dark symbolism, talk about Satan. But in that clearing, it wasn't an edgy story. It was a bleeding, jagged symbol carved into living skin. Colleen tried to run. In the dark and on uneven ground, she made it only a short distance before they caught her and dragged her back. She pleaded for her life. Christa taunted her, telling her she was going to die. The beating, the cutting, and the humiliation blurred together into a prolonged torture. As the assault escalated, Christa grabbed a heavy piece of asphalt or broken concrete from the ground. She raised it and brought it down on Colleen's head. The first blow fractured bone. She hit her again, and again. The force crushed Colleen's skull. Blood soaked into the earth. The screaming stopped. The clearing went quiet. Before leaving, Christa bent over the body and pried loose a fragment of skull. She kept it as a trophy, slipping it into her pocket. Then the three of them walked back toward the dorms, leaving the 19-year-old they had lured out of the building lying in the brush near the tracks. The next morning, 2 University of Tennessee physical plant employees followed their usual route near the agricultural campus. They were used to finding trash, damaged equipment, and the occasional bit of vandalism. Near the edge of the woods, they noticed a shape on the ground that didn't look right. As they got closer, they realized it was a body. The victim's face was swollen and bloodied. Her head injuries were so severe that her features were barely recognizable. Cuts marked her torso, and a carved symbol stood out on her chest. There was no purse, no wallet, nothing to say who she was. The workers backed away and called 911. Wounds told them what they were looking. Wounds told them what they were looking at. Multiple sharp force cuts, severe blunt trauma to the head, and deliberate mutilation. This hadn't been a quick stabbing or a robbery. It was a sustained, personal attack. Meanwhile, back at Job Corps, staff had already noticed that Colleen had never signed back in the night before. When word spread that a young woman's body had been found on the nearby agricultural campus, fear and speculation rippled through the dorms. Students remembered who had left together the previous night. Investigators checked the sign-out sheets. 4 names appeared together: Christa Pike, Daryl Shipp, Shadala Peterson, Colleen Slemmer. Only 3 of those names showed up on the return list. It gave detectives a clear starting point. As detectives questioned students, the same story surfaced again and again. People described Christa's fixation on the idea that Colleen was after her boyfriend. They repeated threats they'd heard, talk about hurting Colleen, making her pay. And they described what Christa had done after the body was found. She bragged. Students told investigators that Christa had described the attack, including the carving of the pentagram and the blows to the head. Some said she showed them a piece of bone she claimed was from Colleen's skull. Those details matched the crime scene too closely to ignore. Police detained Christa and searched her clothing. In the pocket of her jacket, they found a small fragment of bone. Forensic testing later confirmed that it was human and matched the missing piece of the victim's skull. Combined with the sign-out logs and witness statements, the bone turned suspicion into solid evidence. Under questioning, Christa admitted that she and the others had taken Colleen to the wooded area and that there had been a fight. She insisted they had only meant to scare her and that things had gone too far. Detectives had seen the autopsy photographs. They knew the difference between a fight and torture. Tadaro was arrested as a co-defendant. So was Shadala. Faced with the possibility of spending her life in prison, Shadala agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. In exchange for pleading guilty as an accessory, she told them how Christa's jealousy had driven the plan, how the four of them had walked off campus together, and how she had stayed on the edge of the clearing while Christa and Tadaro beat, cut, and finally killed Colleen with the chunk of asphalt. The case horrified Knoxville. The Job Corps Center, meant to give low-income young people a second chance, was suddenly tied to a torture murder. Local news focused on the satanic imagery, the youth of everyone involved, and the detail about the skull fragment. Parents who had sent their kids to the program now wondered what kind of violence had been simmering beneath the surface. In 1996, Christa went on trial in Knox County Criminal Court for first-degree murder and conspiracy. Prosecutors showed jurors the crime scene and autopsy photographs, the forensic match between the bone in her pocket and the missing piece of Colleen's skull, and testimony from Job Corps students about her jealousy, threats, and bragging. Co-defendant Shadala took the stand and described how the four left the dorm together and how the peace walk turned into an ambush in the woods. After only a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Christa guilty on both counts, and the case moved into the penalty phase. The state argued that the killing was especially heinous and cruel. A planned ambush, torture over many minutes, a pentagram carved into a living chest, and a piece of skull taken as a souvenir. The defense asked for life without parole, pointing to Christa's abusive, unstable background, early substance use, and serious mental health problems, and reminding jurors that she had been only 18 at the time of the murder. The jury chose death. In March 1996, the court sentenced Christa Gale Pike to death and added 25 years for conspiracy, making her one of the youngest women in modern American history on death row. Her co-defendant, Tadaro Shipp, received life with the possibility of parole, while Peterson, who cooperated, received probation as an accessory. For decades afterward, Christa's lawyers challenged the sentence in state and federal courts, arguing that her mental illness and history of abuse should spare her and that Tennessee's capital punishment system was flawed. Judges reviewed the record and upheld the conviction and sentence, and she remained the only woman on Tennessee's death row. For Colleen's family, none of that changed the core truth. Their daughter had gone to Job Corps to build a future, and instead was led off campus under a promise of peace, beaten, cut, and left in the dirt. Her mother fought to have the last fragment of Colleen's skull released from evidence so it could be buried with the rest of her remains. The lasting picture was of four young figures walking away from a dorm into the dark, one of them trusting that things were finally going to be made right, never knowing she was heading toward a clearing she would never leave. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.